Greetings, friends, and welcome to another Saturday episode of Countdown to His Coming. Hey, thanks for joining me today. We're going to be delving into something that's quite significant that's happened this week. Some of you have been asking me, what do you think about the verdict against Donald Trump? And does this have any prophetic significance? Well, we'll be talking about that shortly. And hold on to your horses. We'll eventually be going to the Old Testament and the book of Daniel, and we'll be talking about some possibilities. And I'd love to hear your opinion on some of this because none of it's set in stone yet. But what's going on here with the events of this week that are so ground shaking? And if anyone could express my opinion perfectly on this, I would say it's Greg Jarrett, a Fox News contributor who in an opinion piece this week wrote an article entitled, "In Trump trial, there was no real crime, but America just lost something it can never get back." And that's for certain, my friends. What's happened this week is a scar on American history that will remain a painful note until this country either no longer exists or until Jesus returns. In either case, it's going to stick around. It's something that the founders never wanted to see happen in our history. It's such a travesty of justice, especially against one of our own leaders. But needless to say, we have some issues today to cover that may indicate that Donald Trump is a part of a much bigger picture about the end times. What could that be? Well, hang on. First, let's listen to Greg Jarrett as he describes the situation. He said, "Donald Trump did not lose on Thursday. Our once venerated legal system did, and by extension, all Americans lost something precious. Because the failure of justice is a failure of the people. The conviction of the former president in a Manhattan courtroom was preordained. With the inexorable verdict, the ideals of a fair trial and of an impartial jury faded into a figment of our founders' imaginations. They knew that the worst oppression is done by the color of law. They feared it and tried to prevent it. So they, too, have lost. No reversal on appeal can erase the ugly stain. It is indelible. Ethical integrity, equal justice, and the revered rule of law became the fateful casualties of this assault on liberty. There was no real crime to be found. Prosecutors simply invented one. An undefined conspiracy that was factually impossible and unsupported anywhere in the criminal codes. The trial itself, that stretched for 5 agonizing weeks, seemed a mere formality, a hollow exercise. A bookkeeping entry magically morphed from an expired misdemeanor to an active felony in the way that a porcupine can be changed into a prince. At trial, the accused was never informed of his alleged felonious conduct. It was an egregious violation of his Sixth Amendment rights. Jurors were then given a creative menu of 3 possibilities and informed that our cherished constitutional principle of unanimity had gone the way of the dodo. We still don't know and may never know what conspiracy Trump supposedly committed. District Attorney Alvin Bragg proved the English philosopher and jurist Jeremy Bentham correct, who said, "It is never the law itself that is in the wrong. It's always some wicked interpreter of the law that has corrupted and abused it." Now remember for just a second before I go on reading this article that it is Alvin Bragg at the head of this entire conspiracy, a man who was elected on the promise that he would go after the ex-president of the United States. Alvin Bragg, a man who was financed and put into office by one of those folks that, if you remember in my older series on the horns of the beast, one of those horns named George Soros is totally behind it, as well as many other DAs whose campaigns he financed to put them in positions of power in certain cities and states across our country. What's behind that? Well, believe it or not, the Bible actually tells us. It tells us about this worldwide beast that conspiratorially tries to rule the world in the last days before Jesus comes. And we have evidence to see that it's working pretty good right now. Well, back to the article. He said Bragg did not act alone. His accomplice and co-prosecutor, Judge Juan Merchan, blithely disregarded the established rules of evidence, manipulated standards of admissibility to favor the prosecution, sanctioned prejudicial testimony bereft of probative value, and helped engineer a wrongful conviction by depriving Trump of a full and legitimate defense to which he was entitled. Merchan did all of this without conscience or regret. Well, there was never any plausible evidence that Trump committed crimes. There was no legal basis for the indictment. Facts were contrived or exaggerated. Statutes were perverted or ignored. The law enforcers became the lawbreakers. Bragg's scheme to exploit a pathological liar and convicted perjurer as his star witness was a devious maneuver by an unscrupulous prosecutor. On cue, Cohen lied to the jury just as he had lied to everyone else. It was no surprise coming from a man who told Congress, "I have lied, but I'm not a liar." Really? That is a twisted syllogism from an insufferable reprobate. The problem with liars is that for them, truth has no meaning. They are incapable of distinguishing fantasy from reality. They lie to themselves about their own lies. But that did not stop Bragg and his confederates from mining Cohen's skills as an expert prevaricator in their relentless quest to convict Trump. Bragg never had authority to bring a case against Trump based on federal campaign finance violations, which appeared to be the centerpiece of his misbegotten case. And that's why he concealed it to the bitter end. A competent or unbiased judge would have never allowed it. But of course, Merchan was neither. The tragic coda to the Trump trial is that Americans can no longer trust our system of justice. Faith has been squandered. If it can be weaponized against a former president, it can happen to any of us. We are all at risk. When a district attorney who is a powerful force in government abuses his position of trust to subvert the legal process, and when a judge acts in concert to dismantle the due process rights of the accused, our system of justice is threatened. Reverence to the rule of law is lost. Well, as we see where this goes in the coming weeks, we'll probably be able to understand exactly how far it will go in influencing an American election. We'll see exactly whether or not these folks have the ability to do what, by the way, some of the hosts of The View this week were laughing about and cutting up about. Could Donald Trump actually be sent to prison? We'll find out in July, my friends. And as we look at this, you have to ask, is something else playing out on the world stage that's even bigger? Now, I want to call your attention to the prophecy of Daniel in chapter 7, when we are given a beautiful picture of what the world's going to look like at the second coming. We see the Ancient of Days seated on the throne, and one like the Son of Man coming, and who's given dominion and power over the earth, and comes and restores all things and sets up his eternal kingdom. But we're given the picture of four great beasts that appear at the end. The last one, the one most frightful to Daniel, was the one that crushed the whole world and tried to exert its power in the whole world. This fourth beast is reminiscent to us of all the prophecies about worldwide domination going back literally to the Tower of Babel, where Satan's whole idea is a one world government with him in charge. Well, what's going on with the formation of that beast? Well, as we read about what it looks like, Daniel identified a beast that had 7 heads and 10 horns. Wow, 7 heads, like maybe a G7, 10 horns, identified as 10 kings, the rulers who get things done in this worldwide kingdom. Now, as I pointed out previously, don't think in terms of the old-fashioned method of recognizing kings, a guy that raises up a country and its army and then conquers other kingdoms. No, these could be people who rule your lives because they have more power through perhaps politics and economics and other things that, wow, they just form a confederation of worldwide power brokers that brings all of this to pass. Now, you can go back and look at some of my speculation about who those 10 might be, but I left off intentionally at the end of that series a couple of blanks, a couple of places where folks might fit that I said would need to be revealed. And one of the places is the little horn. This is the person that most folks would identify as the Apostle Paul's man of lawlessness, or what some would call the Antichrist. Now remember, John said many antichrists are appearing even in his day and would appear throughout history, and these are those who come against Christ, his church, his kingdom, who deny that Jesus is the Christ. So there's not just one Antichrist, there are many, but there is one that's at the head of the pack in the last days. He's described by Daniel as a little horn. We're going to be down in the, not in the first time that Daniel had the vision, but in the explanation that the angel gives Daniel down in verse 23. Describing that fourth beast, this is what he said. The fourth beast will be a fourth kingdom on the earth, different from all the other kingdoms. It will devour the whole earth, trample it down, and crush it. And the 10 horns are 10 kings who will rise from this kingdom. Another king, different from the previous ones, will rise after them and subdue 3 kings. Now, this is the little horn that Daniel saw in the beginning. What's this little horn going to do? Well, first of all, he's going to see that some of those that are involved with creating the great new world order don't all fit into his plan. And he's going to try to put 3 of them down. Now, in my series, I identified one of those as Elon Musk. You can't argue the fact that Elon Musk has had one of the most powerful positions of any person in history. And from all the things he's created, from SpaceX to even dealing with what's going in your brain as far as microchips, all the things that he's been a part of, that he's one of these people. But guess what? When he turned against the establishment, and when he began to say, hey, look, we're going to take Twitter. I'm going to just buy Twitter because it needs to be a free speech platform, not one that just in an Orwellian way promotes a particular agenda. All of a sudden, all of those other people turned against him and now seem to think that he's one of the worst people on planet Earth and have openly said they're going to try to put him down. All that seems to be in process as well. Matter of fact, Elon Musk, so disturbed over the Trump verdict, is also now optioned to be a part of hosting a town hall meeting about this whole thing with the former president. But now, where does this put us? Could that mean that one of those horns, like Elon Musk, is already being attacked by the little horn? And who is the little horn? Do we know yet? Has he been revealed? Now, from my standpoint, no, he hasn't, but I know some of you have an opinion as to who that is. Hey, let me know what you think. I'm really concerned as I hear some of the different viewpoints as to how this is happening. I think one day it will be crystal clear, but as of today, it isn't yet. But perhaps we have another one of the horns identified. Who am I talking about? I'm talking about Donald Trump. No one can argue against the fact that Donald Trump has been one of the most influential people in the world in these days. And yes, possibly one of the horns of the beast. But you see, Donald Trump's image of what the New World Order needs to look like is more of a capitalistic one, more of a Western format, one where nations are free to be themselves, and with freedom of trade and agreements like that, that the whole world would prosper through capitalism. And that seems to go against the rest of these people who seem to have a viewpoint that's more socialist and more communist. As one of those particular horns that I identified, Xi Jinping in Red China, seems to be trying to literally take over the world one little piece at a time, either by exerting his influence or by just purchasing it, just buying it up like he's buying up our farmland and other things. So what's going on here? Could it be that Donald Trump is one of the horns of the beast and one of those three being attacked by the little horn right now? Now, I know some of you might be saying, why do you think Donald Trump is so important? Think about it, my friends. When Donald Trump came to power, which was so shocking, he first began to work in America to make things better here and to try to raise the economic tide in the United States. But then he turned toward, of all places, Israel. Through his own son-in-law, Jared Kushner, he began to work toward peace in the Middle East. And something happened that has never happened before in history. They were called the Abraham Accords. And one by one, different Arab nations began making peace treaties with Israel. It was a historic move. He did something else that is most important. And remember, from a scriptural standpoint, which nations are going to be focused on through Bible prophecy? Well, it's going to be those that have something to do with God's people and with Jerusalem in the last days. What did Donald Trump do? He declared Jerusalem the capital of Israel. And as the eternal capital of the Jewish people of Israel, we decided to move our embassy to Jerusalem. It was a historic move, mocked and sanctioned by some people, yet other nations began to follow, and they put their embassies in Jerusalem as well. What kind of impact has he had on things that are occurring in the last days? Listen, to point that out, all I have to do is show you this. Many of you have seen it before. It's the Trump coin. Where does this come from? Well, from the Temple Institute in Jerusalem. What does it have on it? Well, on one side, it actually has a picture of the supposed future rebuilt temple, something that this particular group of Jewish leaders has been trying to do for years. They've created all the implements for that temple. They've been slowly but surely putting those together, putting together a biblical priesthood, trying to be authentic down to the very clothing, and getting ready to once again offer sacrifices. Are you kidding me? Yes, that's what's going on in Israel. So on one side of the temple coin is actually the picture of the temple. The languages on the coin also include English. Like doves to their nest, they use Isaiah chapter 60 verse 8 as a scripture to quote, to put on that side with the picture of the temple. But when you flip it over on the other side, the picture is one that's quite unique. There's a menorah, and it talks about to fulfill 70 years because it was coined at the time of the 70th anniversary of the reestablishment of the nation of Israel. And right there in the bottom, there are two interesting pictures, naming first in the background a king named Cyrus, the one who allowed the Jews to go back and rebuild the temple after the captivity. But then right in front of Cyrus is the picture of Donald Trump. That's right. There's Donald Trump on this coin made to raise money to build a temple in Israel, with the picture representing him, including a seal of the United States, of the President of the United States of America, showing that Donald Trump is considered to be a modern Cyrus, facilitating this rebuilding of the temple. When have you ever seen an American who was so admired by a group of folks in Israel that they minted this kind of commemorative coin in his honor? Well, it tells you a little bit about the influence that he had during his short time as president, a time in which there were at least 3.5 years of explosive new peace treaties, and peace agreements with nations around Israel that looked like it might change history. But then something happened, and that was in 2020. I don't have to give you the scenario of all the things that took place during that year that were so amazing that none of us could have ever dreamed up in a fiction book, but yet they happened. And all of a sudden, everything swung the other direction. And it seems like even since then, even since before Donald Trump took office in the first place, there have been people trying to take him down. So where does this put Donald Trump? Does it put him in the position of being one of those three horns, being attacked by the beast, by the little horn that's trying to take him down? Or does it make him the little horn? I don't know. I've actually heard some people say Donald Trump's going to survive this, and then you're going to see he's the Antichrist. Really? So I don't know. But friends, we're watching it unfold on the world stage right now, and I think it's one of the most interesting things that we could ever look at through scriptural eyes. Because I believe what we are seeing is the formation of this worldwide beast, this green kingdom that really is assaulting humanity on every side and causing its ultimate destruction if we follow it at the hands of Satan himself. Or we will follow the trend of revival and spiritual awakening, turning to God in these dark days as we have the opportunity before Jesus comes to see millions more people swept into the kingdom as they look at the choices. What are we going to have? Satan's kingdom or God's kingdom? And are we going to pick one or the other? And the folks in the middle who say, I'm just not going to pick. I don't care. Well, guess what? You just get swept away by the negative whenever you decide not to decide. Friends, it's time to decide to follow Jesus. As for our country, where are we? Well, friends, it's evident that even with the best opportunities to create good nations in a sinful world, that corruption inevitably sneaks in. It's because man is sinful in need of a Savior. And the bad news about that is we're going to continue to see this cycle, attempts to have great nations with positive virtues and values, and then watch them crumble against satanic attack from every side. And that's going to be the pattern until something changes it. And what's going to change that pattern is the return of Jesus Christ, our Savior and Lord, who this time does not come as the suffering servant, but as the conquering King. And friends, what you and I can look forward to is one day there will be a nation, there will be a world in which there will be liberty and justice for all. And that's when the just King Jesus will reign. Well, God bless you. You have a great day in the Lord. I'll see you again next week as we wake up in the Word, and next Saturday for another countdown to His coming. God bless you.